So we've created a new family. We've established its category, laid down the reference planes, and even applied some parameters and constraints. So now we're finally ready to actually start modeling something. We're going to go ahead and add some geometry, and the first form that we're going to look at is just a simple extrusion. Now, we do have the opportunity in the next chapter to get into detail on all of the various forms. I'll just point out a few of them to you right now. Here on the Home tab, there's extrusions, blends, revolves. You can see that there's actually 5 forms, and then the same 5 forms are also available under voids. The simplest of the 5 is the extrusion, and that's the one we'll start with now. Just a little sidebar, if you pause your mouse over any of the tools, as you've no doubt discovered in the project environment, you get tooltips. You get the same here. This helps you identify what each of the forms look like. So we can see that this is actually going to be a sketch-based object. We've encountered other sketch-based objects in the project environment, most likely, if you've been working in Revit for a while. You've seen floor objects or roof objects or stair objects. Extrusions and other solid forms are very similar. They take you into sketch mode, and as you can see, the drawing has grayed out here in the background, so that's one of the obvious indications that we're in sketch mode. The next thing that's fairly obvious is the ribbon tab, tints and color. So it says modify, create extrusion here on the ribbon tab, and the whole thing tints in this sort of greenish color. The last indicator that you're in sketch mode is these 2 icons right here. So we get a mode panel, and we get the big green checkbox. That's our finish edit mode, and we get the red X. That's our cancel edit mode. We use either of these buttons to complete the sketch mode and move on into something else. You do have to finish the sketch mode before you can move on to some other task. So you either have to complete it or cancel it. Now, I should just say that a common mistake for beginners is to start off sketching something and then get sidetracked and go click onto one of the other ribbon tabs. If you find yourself doing that, what you're going to see is that it doesn't look like you can do anything. A lot of things are going to be grayed out. You're going to see everything's grayed out here. You really need to stay on this Modify, Create Extrusion tab. It's very important that you do that when you're in sketch mode. So look for the tinted colored tab and stay there. Everything you need to draw your extrusion is on this tab. So I'm going to start with a rectangle. I'm going to draw a simple rectangle form, and I want to snap that rectangle to the opposite corners of these reference planes. Now, Revit will offer to lock that sketch to the underlying reference planes. And normally that's a really good thing for us to do, and actually applies a nice constraint. It keeps the shape constrained to those reference planes, and ultimately that is what I'm going to want to do here. At the moment, though, I'm going to actually not do that, and I want to show you what will happen if you choose not to. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw the sketch and click the big green checkbox and finish that. So when I do, you can kind of see that here's the form right here. A little tough to see in plan, so I might want to shift over to other views to get a look at it. But before I do that, I'm going to stay here to look at this. So here's the form right here, and it is attached to these reference planes. Let's go ahead and flex it. I'm going to go to my Family Types dialog that we've seen before, move it out of the way, put in a number here, put in another number here. Doesn't matter what numbers I put in, really. And click Apply. You may be a little surprised to see that the form actually adjusts, even though we didn't constrain the sketch, right? We did not click the little padlock icons, and the sketch, therefore, was not locked to the reference planes. But yet somehow, Revit is assuming that we want that behavior anyway. Why is it doing that? Where is that assumption coming from? I'd like to talk about a concept called automatic sketch dimensions. While you're creating items in Revit, Revit is always looking for opportunities to add smarts to those items, to add relationships, and to make the overall experience more intelligent, more valuable. In this case, it's doing that with something called automatic sketch dimensions. You have to kind of know that these things exist in order to understand that they're there and to make use of them. I'm going to show them to you in the Visibility Graphics dialog, and I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut to get in here, VG. So if you type the letters VG in succession, that will take you to the Visibility Graphics Override dialog. If you've gone into this dialog in the project environment, you see a lot more categories listed here than what we're seeing right now. Because we're in the Family Editor, I'm only seeing the active category, furniture in this case. There's really no clue here to automatic sketch dimensions in this case because, everything is turned on. If you go to the Annotation Categories tab, underneath Dimensions, there is an item called Automatic Sketch Dimensions, and by default, it's turned off. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on, click OK, select my extrusion, and edit the sketch. Now, when I do that, you're going to see these 4 tiny little dimensions that are set to 0 appearing on each of the 4 sides of the sketch. You can leave these. If they're giving you what you want, you can use them just fine. There's really no reason otherwise. But sometimes the automatic sketch dimensions will actually start to give you results you weren't looking for, usually when the forms get more complicated. So we'll probably have some opportunities to discuss them again in later movies when the forms start to get more complicated. If you decide that you want to be more deliberate about where the constraints are and what's controlling what, and this is really the point of the discussion, then you can assign the constraint yourself deliberately, and when you do, that will remove the automatic sketch dimension. In other words, you can't have both an automatic sketch dimension and a manually applied constraint. The manually applied constraint will always override and remove the automatic sketch dimension. I can't just delete it. If I try and delete it, it just comes back. So the delete key isn't the answer. What we want to do is take this geometry and lock it to the underlying reference planes. Now, we could do that one of 2 ways. I could move it out of the way and then move it back again to get the lock to appear. When I click that, notice that the 0 dimension disappears. Or the easier way to do this is with the Align tool. So I'm going to click on Align, click on the reference plane, and then the sketch edge, and lock it. Click on the reference plane, sketch edge, and lock it. Notice the dimensions are disappearing when I do that. Click on the reference plane, sketch edge, and lock it. So all 4 automatic sketch dimensions disappear. I go to Finish, and ultimately I really won't see anything different with respect to how it flexes. It's still going to flex the same way, but that's only because the geometry that we have on screen is so simple. Later, when the model gets more complicated, you're probably going to find that you're going to want to control those constraints a little bit more deliberately than relying simply on the automatic sketch dimensions. Wanted you to be aware that they were there and understand how they behave. The automatic sketch dimensions will apply automatically by the software and will remain around until you apply other constraints manually to override them, and then they will remove. But before you can even know they're there, you have to go to VG and turn them on. So that's creating our first piece of geometry and a little bit about how it gets constrained to the reference planes using automatic sketch dimensions.